Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Central Virginia fishing report with Ethan Martin of TaleTellers Fly Shop. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing great today. How you doing?
Just trying to stay out of trouble. I checked your weather before we started recording, and it looks like you are into kind of a cloudy, slightly rainy, kind of typical fall pattern in Central Virginia.
Yeah, that's dumping rain. Well, it has the past hour here. So, those little showers, stuff like that, I don't think they're really going to impact too much any of our local rivers that much. Typically, like this time of year, when the trees still have their leaves, they're going to be soaking up so much of that water that it takes a couple of days really before it goes nasty on most of the water here.
Got it. So, with the cooler temperatures, assuming you don't get blown out, probably means smallmouth fishing is cooling off a little bit and trout fishing is heating up.
Yeah, that's pretty much the dynamic. I've been fortunate enough, I guess I'll say it that way. Like in the past week, we've done kind of like a muskie / smallmouth float, and then done a couple of days on like our smaller trout streams. So it's a cool time of the year because you can we've got really good flows this year, as opposed to other years where we can kind of do a little bit of everything, whatever tickles your boat that day,
Got it. And so are you starting to see the topwater bites shut down for the smallmouth?
So like the past couple of days that we've been out, we've tried it. Like towards the afternoons when everything heats up a little bit more, you'll hear the cicadas. And we've caught a couple on topwater in the afternoon, but we tried to force it one day in the morning and just didn't get anything, looking at it. So it's one of the things, like I would keep a box in the boat or keep a couple with you, but that's not going to be my go-to first thing in the morning like, it was a couple weeks ago. But, when they're going to eat topwater is when you're going to put a topwater in front of their face. So you kind of never know until you go, because it could be that, there's fish in that area that are still seeing cicadas or are still triggering on that. And so it's worth it, like I said, to put a bug on and have at it for an hour or two. But if you're not catching anything, I wouldn't force it this time of year. I would go with something else.
Got it. And in terms of, what to do when you're waiting for the top water action to be good, are you fishing mostly streamers, or have you already gotten pushed to dredge the bottom with like crayfish and things like that?
Yeah, it's been a bit of both. So like it was kind of crazy. When is it? Last week, the water is like crystal clear, and it's low, but it's not low enough to where we're not still floating. And so you're actually doing a lot of sight fishing, which is kind of cool. And so we'll end up, you see 2 fish or 3 fish sitting there cruising or like staged up. And so we first started throwing streamers at them, and they didn't respond well to like clousers. The second those eyes hit the water and like cause that splash, the fish, would bolt. And the same thing with poppers, crazy enough. There was these 2 decent sized fish that were just, kind of staged up. So I knew, we had been spooking fish a bit that day. So I cast a good, like 15, probably even 20 foot ahead of them. And the second that popper splatted, they were gone. They didn't like that sound. So if I could go back in time, I would have much rather had like a weightless minnow imitation, like a Murtich minnow or something, to just kind of like put in front of them and just dead drift it into their face, rather than, causing that big splat. So it all depends on the fish and kind of where you're at. Or the other option, that I could have done would be try like a clawdad or a crayfish pattern, put it far upstream and let it kind of dead drift in front of them. But there's not a lot of water. So, it's not like you have to dredge 8 foot down into a hole. There's only like really, and some of the floats on the upper and like in downtown, you're fishing those ledges that are like 3-ish to 4-ish feet maybe, and just fishing the edges. So it's kind of one of those things where, in my personal boxes, I have poppers. I have weightless minnows. I have ones that have like Clouser style eyes on them. Then your clawdads, critter mites, that sort of thing. So I'll kind of switch through that stuff throughout the day, even just to see what they're eating. And you never really know. Some days they're keying in on crayfish, which is what we found last week. But then there was a friend of mine who went out on Sunday and he caught everything on a merch minnow, a weightless with an intermediate fly line. So it's one of those things you just gotta be willing to play around to figure out what those bass are going to do, especially through the fall, because it's not nearly as consistent with how they're going to respond to stuff as it is in the summer.
Got it. And we've got a question from Dave, and Dave wanted to know, and this is a trout question. He wanted to know, kind of as we move into fall, what are your tips for fishing that kind of boundary season, fall, late fall into early winter, and what do you like in terms of patterns?
So I still, for talking trout here, I still use a lot of foam patterns that are just smaller, beetle patterns that are like size 16 or 14. And that's what I'll kind of transition to, because we don't have tons of hatches in the fall. So if you're coming out trying to fish a hatch per se, you'll probably be disappointed. So I would still stick with some of your general attractor style patterns, because those fish, those like small trout, they have been conditioned seeing bugs hit the surface pretty much every day. So that's definitely worth having. I use a lot more streamers, honestly, through the fall, because there's a lot of little minnows around that make up a good meal for a trout. Especially as they're feeling that winter is coming sort of vibe as well. So I use a lot of little micro streamers. I guess I would call them like size 10 woolly buggers, or we've got some like jig style stuff we do in the shop here it's just like some of my local tires make. And I really like that because it's not imitating insect hatch. It's imitating more so like a bait fish hatch, or like the size minnows that are in the stream right now. And those are really effective throughout the fall as well. So if you can do a dry dropper with some of them, you could use a bigger dry fly, but you could also use an indicator, or you can just strip them through a hole, and they work really well. So that's kind of what I would do on the trout game. Is I still do the dry dropper some using. I guess this is the summary. I still do the dry dropper some, using a terrestrial on top. Weightless nymphs are decent with lower flows, like what we've got, and like a pattern like the greeny weenie. We catch a stupid amount of fish on those flies. I think it's the dumbest fly ever, but it does catch a lot of fish, and I use them. And then using smaller streamer patterns as well are going to get you fish.
Got it. And remember, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. If we use your question, and you can send them to us on our social media pages or shoot us an email. If we use your question, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and you'll get into a drawing for something cool from the shop at the end of the season. And before I let you hop, Ethan, why don't you let folks know where they can find you, shop hours, and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, so if you're in the Lynchburg area, then you can stop in. We're in downtown Lynchburg, so we're pretty much right on the banks of the James River. The address is 920 Commerce Street, if you're familiar with downtown. But if you can't make it down, then you can always just look on our website. We've got pretty much everything that we have in the store is up and online, and I'm always combing through that, making it better every day. So that's TaleTellers, VA, like Virginia, .com. And then you can also always email or call or Instagram, Facebook, any of that ways that people communicate nowadays. We've got all that. And you can get in touch with pretty much me, because I'm the one that always answers the phones. So, yeah, and I like answering questions too. I'm kind of an open book with most things. So, send the stuff my way.
Absolutely. Well, listen, folks, get out there and enjoy this cool weather, and catch the tail end of smallmouth season and get ready for a really, really great fall trout season. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ethan.
Tight lines.